All right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just got unexpected good news, and call it a double dose of good news. But they're receiving some positive stuff, and I think in the South, and we actually do, I will admit, we do some Falcons videos here, but I feel like the Falcons is what everybody's kind of talking about in the NFC South, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are just sitting here like, hey, we've won this thing over and over and over again, and Baker Mayfield is still proven the best quarterback in the division, and we have some really good talent on this team, and we're going to talk about that. So here's what we're going to get into in this video. We're going to talk about the schedule. We're going to talk about the unexpected good news that you just got based on an article from PFF, but we're also going to let you know, if you're new to this channel, my name is Craig, me and my buddy Chris, we are not Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans. We're Lions fans, all right? But we want to talk about the teams that the national media typically ignores. So we enjoy talking about teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until you beat us in the regular season last year. That wasn't fun. But anyways, with all that being said, let's talk about some of this good news. And I think when you look at it, and you saw what they did in the draft, and you knew it was already impressive, according to PFF, the wide receiver group is the strongest in the NFL in Tampa Bay. Best wide receiver class, or not class, but group in the NFL. Here's what they had to say. Assuming Chris Godwin returns to full health, the Buccaneers have arguably the deepest wide receiver room in the NFL. By the way, even if he doesn't return to full health, they have one of the deepest wide receiver rooms in the NFL. Mike Evans is showing no signs of slowing down after posting an elite 90.2 PFF receiving grade in 2024. Godwin wasn't far behind. By the way, he was lighting it up last year, wasn't he, before he got hurt? I mean, just absolutely lighting it up, and they rewarded him with a contract. Godwin wasn't far behind with an 85.7 PFF receiving grade before suffering a season-ending injury. Here's the thing. All right, I'll talk about this in a second. Rookie Jalen McMillan came on down the stretch with a 75.8 PFF receiving grade over his final 5 games. Those three are now joined by first-round pick Emeka Egbuka, who separates extremely well on underneath routes. Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard also provide valuable depth in the 5th and 6th spots in the rotation. Here's the thing that you have to understand. Yes, Godwin was a big blow to this team. And Evans was hurt too. And here's what I will say. Jalen McMillan has now proven to be a good wide receiver. I don't know if he was there if Godwin and Evans don't get hurt. I don't know if he posts that 75.8 PFF receiving grade in the final 5 games. I have Jalen McMillan on a couple fantasy teams, and I don't know if he was playable if those guys didn't get hurt. He was playable at the end of the year in fantasy football. But with as good as he ended up being toward the end of the year, you would have to assume that by mid-year, end of the year, even beginning of the year, he is this team's number 4 wide receiver. And when the Bucs have decided to draft Emeka Egbuka, that has to be purely a couple things. 1, best player available on the board. Best player available. Number 2, Baker Mayfield, we trust you. Here are the keys. We want you to run what might be the most potent offense in the NFL. Has a good running game. They have a good offensive line, and they've gotten there, right? And now you have just ridiculous talent on the outside that is probably, and I would make the argument that they're right. I think they do have the deepest wide receiver class. Look, yeah, you can look at other teams. You can look at Dallas Cowboys now that they have Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, but there's no depth there. You have the 1-2 punch, which is almost as good as anybody with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but then you have your 6 wide receivers deep and your 4 wide receivers proven deep. And I think that's what's really, really impressive. You could go Eagles, where you could say, all right, like, hey, you got 2 great wide receivers. But what after that? You could talk about the Lions with St. Brown and Jameson Williams. But what about after that? Right? So this is crazy. Even with injuries, even knowing your best 2 wide receivers are getting a little bit long in the tooth, one more than the other, right? They're still playing at a high level, but even if they don't, you have people there to ensure behind them. All right, let's talk schedule. And this is where I think there's some more good news coming in with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But first, I'm going to show you a bunch of fun graphics. First one that I like to look at is strength of schedule. What is the total win percentage of 2024 opponents? And here you see in the bottom half, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You see them down there. That's pretty impressive. A lot of your other playoff teams, let's just look NFC, right? Lions, Eagles, Cowboys, Packers, Vikings, Commanders, all have a tougher schedule. Rams, all have a tougher schedule than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So you have to understand that that is a little bit of an advantage. Here's another one. This is miles traveled. It does become a big issue. I don't think the Bucs have any overseas games. They're only traveling 18,000 miles. Dead middle of the road. Middle of the road. All right? You don't want to be over here traveling over 30,000 miles. That's tough. They don't have to do that. Then there's a couple of things when you look at the schedule that you just have to say to yourself, like, ooh, that's not bad. I don't mind that at all. So let's take a look at it and a couple things that actually stand out to me. Things that stand out to me. You open at Atlanta. That's a statement game. All right. Then you go to Houston. All right. If you start off 1-1, you're good. If you start off 2-0, you're good. If you start off 0-2, you have plenty back to go there. This is a front-loaded schedule. To finish the year, all right, you have Arizona, New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina, Miami, Carolina. That is 6 games where you could very easily run the table. Not only that, but toward the end of the year, even if you're not, if you're hovering around 500 walking into week 13, you got back-to-back home games. That is extremely rare to get 3 home games in a row and not have 3 road games in a row. And it's also extremely rare to get 3 home games toward the back end of the schedule. These are things that are absolutely favorable to your team. All right? Absolutely favorable to your team. I think that's really, really good. Also, you were first place in your division, so the fact that the schedule that you have is overall not in the top half is really tricky. Because if you don't know how the NFL schedule is made, you play your own divisional opponents each twice, so that's 6 games. Then you play 2 other divisions. All right, that is another 8 games. That gets you to 14, but you have 4 left. And you play 3 teams that were all finished in the same position in their division as you did yours. So for you, you have to play the Philadelphia Eagles because they won the NFC East. You have to play the Detroit Lions, again, seemingly every year recently. You are playing the Lions. And you have to play the Houston Texans. So those aren't easy matchups. Not at all. All right? So you have the 6 games against the South, and then you have 4 teams. You have to play the NFC West this year, and you have to play the AFC East. So the NFC West, not terribly hard. AFC East, that's the one you want to play. So it's a good schedule for the Bucs, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do this year. We had to talk schedule a little bit. But also there was some good stuff just on players. All right, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.